We've got one more bonus interview for you for this module. It's with Mike Janssen of current.org, and he's going to talk a little bit about how he uses Codex in VS Code to work on these kinds of projects at his newsroom.
Hello.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you, first of all, so much for doing this. You're saving my ass. This is very helpful.
Yeah, hopefully it turns out to be.
Why don't we start? Tell us who you are, what you do, and what your general experience level is with coding agents or CLI agents.
Okay. So I'm Mike Janssen. I'm digital editor for Current. We're a trade publication that covers public broadcasting. And I started using Codex and VS Code probably a couple months. For me, what really got me into it was Florent Daudens. I don't know how well I'm saying that name, but he's with Hugging Face. He has a newsletter about AI and journalism, and he had the series where he was talking about how, I'm using Claude to do all these things for me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And he was like, and you can do it with Codex. And I was like, that sounds even better because that's what I'm using. And we're using, I'm using Codex because we started paying for ChatGPT Plus early on. And now I'm kind of feeling like, maybe I should have gone with Claude. But at the time, it was like what I was using and what I knew how to use. And so we're paying for that, and I feel like it's going to be tough to add Claude or switch at this point. So I'm just kind of
well, if you need a $10, if you need a pass, if you need a week of Claude Pro, I have 3 passes available, and then I get $10 of overtime usage. But
okay,
that's interesting. So you said, I think you cut out for a second, but you said you've been using it for a few months, and you were using it in VS Code with the Codex plugin.
Yes, that's how I do it.
Excellent. Okay, and tell me, what do you think? Tell me about VS Code, because I've used VS Code very lightly, but I think a lot of people might be more inclined to use something like that, like an IDE, instead of jumping right to the terminal. What do you like about VS Code? I'm sure there are things you hate about it. I know the memes, but what do you think is the value of using something like that? Is it the file explorer and preview, local preview, host preview? What do you use VS Code for, and why not the terminal, raw terminal?
Well, I mean, when you ask me these questions, I have to admit, I don't even know what you're asking because I'm kind of a novice. I mean, I have to tell you, before I started doing this, I didn't code at all, pretty much. I mean, I knew some things, I had done a little bit. I was not scared to use the terminal. I had used the terminal for various things, but it was always just I would, for example, ask ChatGPT, how do I do this? And it would say, put this in the terminal, and I would do it. And that's kind of my level of understanding, right? And so
that's perfect, actually. So you're right on track.
I'm almost entirely vibe coding. I mean, the code I'm creating is probably terrible. If someone who knew how to code looked at it, they would just be probably aghast, But it's just I'm not doing anything that I feel like I can break, and I just feel like I'm just using it on things that are little projects that I've had in mind for a while and seeing what it can do. So far it's doing a lot, so it's really great. I just did that because that's what Florent said to do in his newsletters. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it too. And I'm just using it pretty much entirely with the Codex plugin. I don't really understand much about it other than what I'm doing with Codex, honestly. So that's all I can tell you about that. I can't compare it to anything else because I barely know anything else about coding or environments or whatever. So there you go.
I think a lot of people are in that boat. I think myself, I also kind of fell into that. For a while, I was using Google AI Studio or Replit to start, because I couldn't in my brain connect the dots between, okay, I have the code. I know that I need multiple files, code files for things like, custom style sheets. I need JavaScript files. I understand that Python allows you to do actions somehow, but I don't understand where it lives. And the deployment element was really confounding me. Even when I was first learning or exploring APIs, early ChatGPT and early 11 Labs, I thought, okay, I got an API key from OpenAI, and I have an API key from 11 Labs. I want to make my own chat, and I want it to speak out loud. This is actually before they released voice mode. But I could not in my brain put together the pieces to understand, okay, I have both of these ends. Where does this live? So I ended up with something like Replit. Yeah. I learned very quickly the difference between a static deployment and a dynamic deployment, and how much money one costs versus the other when we tried to use in a live site for an event, and I ran up our $50 budget cap immediately. I've exposed my OpenAI key on the internet on GitHub and learned that lesson. Like I've done all that, but I'm very similar. Like I basically just bounced around to different things, anti-gravity, VS Code with the plugins and everything. And then eventually I just landed on the terminal and PowerShell in particular. But so that's perfect. So I wonder if you could talk a little. You said it's doing a lot, but you're doing things that are at least low stakes, or if they go horribly wrong, the worst case is maybe you say, hey, to your supervisor or your editor, you say, hey, yeah, this didn't work out. It's going to take more time. What kind of things are you actually deploying this on? What kind of tasks? And how wild are you letting it run? What permissions are you giving it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've probably started and, finished most of, but started at least 10 projects of different kinds and different scopes. The first thing I wanted to do was, and I was kind of my test run with it was, we had a reporter who was out on family leave because he had just had a kid. And I had to step in and do our newsletter, which we send out twice a week, and we do it with MailChimp. And it's basically just like a aggregation of our links to our posts since the last newsletter. It's very simple, And I've been thinking for a while, well, there's got to be a way to just automate this production as much as possible so we don't have to spend any time on it. I mean, it's not that time consuming, but still, it's very basic. But MailChimp's automation is not very good. Like, it doesn't let you rearrange things. It's hard to play with, and it's just like, it's not working. I've tried it before and didn't get anywhere. So this time I was like, and so we use our Parsley metrics to determine the order of items in the newsletter based on like popularity. So I was like, I want you to create the HTML for each block in the newsletter. I want you to sort it by the popularity of the item in Parsley, blah, blah, blah. And, and it did it. And I was like, heck yeah. I mean, this takes me like 2 minutes now, where it used to take me like half an hour, right? And then I added a Slack plugin where you could go to a Slack channel and put a link to a story that maybe missed the run and say, give me the HTML for this. And then it just spits it back out, And so it was like, this is awesome. Like I've been thinking about this for a long time and I didn't know how to do it. And now it's like took me a day on and off or something. I got it done, So it was like, what else can we do? So I've set it up for a lot of tracking and gathering of documents related to public broadcasting. Like for a long time, I had this idea of like, when a new 990 comes out for a nonprofit organization that we cover, I want to know when that 990 comes out. I want it in a Slack channel. I want a summary of what's in it for anything that would be noteworthy for us, newsworthy. And how do we do this? And I just set it to work, and it has created such a system. Previously I was thinking I would have to pay an outside developer or something. So after I finished that newsletter task, I decided to use it to gather documents and data related to the organizations we cover and to public broadcasting in a regular way, where it just goes out and finds it and gives it to me instead of me having to know to go look or whatever. So for example, for a long time, I've been thinking about how I wanted to be able to systematically track new 990 forms that come out for nonprofit organizations that we cover, since obviously we cover a lot of nonprofits. Some of them are part of universities, so that a station's part of university is more opaque to us. But if it's an independent nonprofit, I want to know when their 990 is available, and I want I've been using ChatGPT to analyze forms like that and tell me what in this is noteworthy. What are you seeing here that we should care about? So I've set up a system to check for new 990s, let me know when they're out, analyze them automatically, put an alert in a Slack channel. We're not really in the 990 season yet, so I don't yet know how well it's going to work. We'll know in a couple months. But I'm looking forward to that. I've used it to track state budgets, federal audits. I used it to, Florent in his newsletters talked about how he uses it to like clean up his RSS feeds. And I have a ton of RSS feeds following public broadcasting stuff. It's not been as good at that as I would like. I feel like I'm not maybe doing it the right way, but it has helped somewhat. It saved me some time going through too many RSS feeds and too many items.
When I edit this, I'm going to have you send that newsletter to me, because right now, as I edit this, I'll be putting up a screen capture or a little a thing of the newsletter so people can read that. I've personally been a big fan, and you'll see in the course materials, of the Ethan Mollick's Substack, One Useful Thing.
Yep.
Especially early on, he felt like one of the few people who wasn't trying to sell me some shit as he was writing. You know what I mean? And that's seemingly and increasingly super rare. But I love what you're saying too, because it seems like you're following a very similar philosophy that I try to take, which is to use the AI to build stuff that doesn't need AI to function. You're relying on cron jobs and Python scripts and RSS parsing, and stuff like that doesn't require the high compute and inference of booting up or running up API tokens costs for the AI models themselves. I think that's the way forward. I think that's the smart way forward. And especially, I like to say this, and I know that this probably just triggers every actual software engineer on the planet. But the thing that that allows me or makes me more comfortable relying on AI for the things like code, as opposed to Google searches or even the hallucinations associated with parsing large documents, is that to some degree and at some level of severity, the way that this works is if the code works, then it works. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And again, I know that causes real developers to recoil, because it can work and do the thing you want, but also expose your social security number or whatever, your shell to the internet, which I almost did on the first app. I actually literally did, but then realized it and pulled it back. I was like, yeah, we'll do port forwarding, so that way I can access my shelf remotely from my phone, and all I have to do is go to a URL. And then I kind of thought about it, and I was like, I am opening up a direct hole into the heart of my main computer internet. I wonder how that can go wrong. But at the base level, for something like, I need to take information from here, compile it, present it, and put it here. If that pipeline works, then the code works. You don't have to worry as much about that. And it sounds like you're taking a similar approach. Does that accurately categorize or sort of classify how you would approach that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there have been a couple things I've been doing with an AI layer. Like, I wanted to create a chatbot that would kind of work over our archives, and that reporters, it's not public facing, but like internally, reporters could say, what have we reported in the past 5 years about this station, and then get like a easy summary with links, as opposed to just like searching our site, which and getting results back and having to comb through them or whatever. I kind of want to, I've gathered a bunch of financial documents from station websites, and I'd like to be able to have kind of like a chatbot interface for that, to say like, show me what's been going on with this station's finances for the past 5 years or whatever, and get an AI summary of that. So those are not
AI enhanced. Those are like AI enhanced SQL queries, basically.
Yeah.
So
it
runs the SQL query, and it pulls back the information, and then digests it and presents it in a non-technical or plain language way. That's really interesting. I like that. I wonder if you could sort of so one of the premises, or the main premise, at least the first two modules, are kind of the whole course, is escaping the chat window, the browser window. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit. I mean, it's somewhat of an obvious answer, but what is it that you were able to do with the VS Code version or the terminal version of these tools that would be impossible or impractical if you were doing this by going to chatgpt.com every time?
So I actually use, just to clarify, I use the ChatGPT standalone app on my Mac rather than the browser. But I mean, I don't really, there might be ways that I could be using the ChatGPT app to do this kind of thing, but I don't know how or what that's like. I kind of just got started with this because of Florent saying use VS Code, and I use VS Code. But I mean, in VS Code, I'm using the Codex extension, so I'm basically doing it all through chat. I mean, it tells you sometimes to go, do this in the terminal because I can't do it. You need to do it, and just do this, and then I'll do that, and then tell it what happens. And it's like, oh, well,
I love telling it.
Love
telling it. I love just being like, I'm sorry, I'm driving. You're going to have to do it, and it usually figures out to do it. But would you be okay? Would you be open to like sharing your screen and showing us the VS Code setup? I have it on my home computer, but I would love to see the ChatGPT setup that you have. Obviously, we'll make sure and edit out if there's any sensitive info that shows up on the screen. But I would love to just get a sense of the environment and how you lay out your structure, if you're comfortable with that.
So for some reason recently, the kind of like the extensions pane in this switched to the right side from the left. I don't understand why. Like one day it was just different, and I was like, "Hey, what happened?" And I could
Oh, see,
probably
I'm a
even put it
right
back,
side.
but it's like
I'm a right side chat guy. I'm a right side chat. Oh,
I
interesting.
got used to the left side, but now I'm doing right side, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, this is basically it. You know, I'm mostly just doing stuff here in the chat window and telling it what I want, and it's doing pretty much everything. But if I need to put stuff in the terminal, I've got the terminal over here on the left, and I just go over here and pop it in. Up here, you know, occasionally we're looking at documents, you know, or I'm looking at documents it tells me to look at or whatever, and these come up in the upper left. But I really don't even use this that much. It's mainly everything's here in the chat and then some stuff in the terminal, and that's pretty much how I work.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, so my understanding and my experience with this is there's a couple of different windows and panes that you can have in here. One of them is obviously your file explorer. You can look through the different files. You can edit the code yourself if you want to look through that, or your markdown files. Obviously, you have your console and your terminal where you can see errors, or you can run commands in the shell. And then, of course, the chat window. One thing that I do like about this, and that was tempting originally, was the ability to upload screenshots or paste screenshots. You can click and drag images, or you can use Alt V to paste into PowerShell, but it can get a little wonky. But the thing with me is I am a very strict. Well, yours it would be agents.md. Walk me through. Do you use or update or take advantage of the context file or the memory markdown file for ChatGPT? Are you aware of that, or have you done anything with that? Your agents.md file.
I'm not really aware of it.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, who are watching, every LLM has, especially the CLI version, has a core file that is in every repository or project folder and in the root or user level. And for Codex, it's called agents.md. And then every time you open or start a session in that project folder, it ingests that agents.md file and information to start the session. So you can use it to put things like style preferences, reminders, or rules where it typically gets things wrong. You can have it log that to agents.md so that next time it's not coming to it fresh and it's going to make those same mistakes. For me, that has been one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal. It's up there with like the different skills. And I think, from what I understand, Codex does have skills that you can use as well, which are basically, for those who don't know, basically also just markdown files with sets of instructions. And the difference is with the agents.md or with an MCP server, for example, those are always loaded in every chat. But skills and plugins are loaded on a case-by-case basis. So when you're doing front-end design, you can invoke the front-end design skill in Claude, and it will load in some context about and instructions about how to do good front-end design. Or if you're doing data parsing, you can also make custom skills for different workflows that are tailored to your processes. And so Codex is apparently very good at creating an agents.md file. And I wonder if you would mind trying that. If you type in the chat window there, if you type /init, the worst case scenario is it'll create a markdown file that you can delete. But I'm wondering to see how skills and / commands work here.
Okay, so /init in the chat window.
Yeah, /init. There we go. Let's see if that works.
I do notice that in my...
okay, so it doesn't have that there. When you hit /, let's see what you got here. Okay, so it does have skills. And if we scroll down, let's say it has code review, skill creator, open ended reference. What about agents? If you type /agent, nothing, huh? Interesting. What if you ask it to create an agents.md file? See if it should understand that. The current agent, so it does capitalize it. Okay, I only found an agents.md. Okay, so it does have one, and it's creating a lowercase one. So if you click that capital agents.md, you do have one of these.
I made this, when I first started. This was at Florent's recommendation in the newsletter. I had forgotten that I did this.
So this is the kind of thing where every time it does something right or wrong, or if I have something that we've added a new component to the architecture, I always say, let's update for me, it's Claude.md. Let's update our Claude.md because it's going to load all that stuff every time. And so I try to make sure that I tell people to keep that fresh, because that's how you end up with it relying or falling back to old patterns when you've already moved on. But so that's really interesting. So, and you can see here, what happens if you click on one of those links, the agents.md links? Does it open it in the file explorer? That's what I'm assuming.
Doesn't seem to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can stop the screen share now. This is really useful.
Okay.
And I just want to wrap up because I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But what are some of the pain points or pushback that you've gotten, if any? Are there anything you're concerned about? Have you felt that sort of cognitive offloading, atrophy that everyone talks about when it does this stuff? Or are you more like me, who had never had any cognitive sense to begin with this? So it's like, I like to liken it to, if you're just learning how to golf and you just go out on the course and you start hitting golf balls, they will eventually go down the fairway, or at least in a direction. But over time, you can get the balls to go straight, but you still are developing a bad swing. And that's what I worry about, that I will have a bad back because I've been swinging all out of whack because I never got proper lessons. And that's kind of what it feels like with this software development stuff. But I wonder if you felt that as someone else who didn't have any prior experience going in, or if you're just flying through, you're loving this, you're surfing the wave.
I mean, overall, it's pretty great. I don't really, like I said, I don't really feel like I know what I'm doing. So I feel like any experienced coder who would look under the hood at my code would just be like, what the heck is this? But it does what I want it to do. So that's enough for me. And like I said, I'm mostly doing these kind of like internal projects where the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work and I don't get the information I want. It's not like it's breaking my website or causing some massive failure that affects other people. It's just my sandbox kind of, So I guess I'm not that concerned, but it's like, I don't really feel like I'm learning very much about code. I'm looking forward to your workshop because I feel like I'm going to learn at least a little more than what I know now about some of this stuff, But for now, it's just great. It's really making things a lot easier and, bringing me a lot of useful information, and I'm having a great time with it, there are some projects I've done where it's like, I feel like a more experienced coder would know when things I'm trying are not working and they would move on or find another way to try it. Whereas I just am probably beating my head against something for too long because I don't know any better. I'm just letting I'm letting Codex try to do what it wants to do and not realizing that it's being stupid and it's never going to get it done. Like we were trying to do something where I was trying to get information about, it was from usaspending.gov and tell me about federal grants that have gone to public broadcasters that are on this site. And it was just seemingly unable to search in the way that was useful. And it kept trying and trying and trying. And I just kind of got the feeling it really was never going to work, and I feel like someone else who's more knowledgeable would have cut it off after 10 minutes. But for me, it was just like, well, let's just keep saying, okay, do this,
keep digging.
This,
that's too damn bad.
And eventually it was just like, I can't do it. And I was like, well, I kind of figured you couldn't, but I just thought we'd see what happened, So maybe I'm not being as efficient as others would be, but it's better than where I was before, which was not being able to do any of this stuff. So.
Last thing. So if you had some words of advice for someone who was just dabbling in this, some words of caution or wisdom or, excitement or whatever it is, where would you point them? What would you lay out in front of them that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, we have a reporter who's kind of more into AI than most of our staff. And when he's the one who was on leave, and when he got back, I told him, oh man, I've been having a blast with Codex. You should give it a try. And I basically just pointed him to Florent's newsletters and said, here's how I got started. And if you want to follow these directions, which weren't entirely intuitive, it took me a little work to get through it, but I was like, set it up and start doing stuff. And then, I think the way I got into it kind of worked well for me, which is take a small project that would just save you some time and just tell it you want to do it and see what happens, and for me, it was make the newsletter as automated as possible, we even went through a process where it was going to be even more automated, but it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, that's not working, but let's just make it something that will work and that will save me time. We did that. And then I was like, well, what else should I do? And sometimes you can even just ask it. After I started realizing, one area we're doing a lot of work in is gathering documents from different places and, working with data in that way. So I asked it, what are some, useful APIs that we could be tapping to get some more information that would be helpful to me in my job? Because, I'm reporting on public broadcasting. And it was it came up with 10 ideas. It was I think these are good ideas. this is probably easier and higher value. These are probably more difficult and lower value. So let's start with this. And I was like, sounds great. So just ask it, tell it what you do, and ask it what it thinks would be helpful. And it can steer you in some good directions, So just, have fun with it.
Excellent. I love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope you get as much out of the course as you can. I'm going to do my best to make it comprehensive without dragging it out too much, because, as I'm sure we could dive into this stuff for months.
Right.
I have. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, so much for your time.
Yeah, you
anything
bet.
else you want to shout out or anything before? And I'll send you the video when it's done being edited. But anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I don't think so.
Excellent. All right, man. Thank you. And cut.